So, good morning, good evening for everyone because you live in the different regions, countries, right? Thank you very much. I'm thrilled to have you all here on the webinar. This is a special day because we have a special guest from Vanderbilt University, USA, Debra. So she is a multi-talented person, an online instructor, a professor teaching at a university, and a language teaching specialist. Everyone, Debbie has taught English as a second language to legal professionals and university students, and most recently at Vanderbilt University. But she said that she just retired. Yeah, but she did uh, teaching more than 20 years. That's amazing. Okay, she is also a consultant to U.S. State Department. She served as an English language specialist, providing teacher training, material development, and teaching legal English, working in Serbia, Indonesia, Ukraine, Jordan, Egypt, and China. Her experience also includes directed the Legal Writing Center for the China program at Temple University, Wesley School of Law, serving as a lecturer in English for specific purposes in the law and language program at the University of Augsburg, Germany. Oh, that's in Germany. Now, everyone, you know that we are in the pandemic phase, the COVID-19, and many of the schools have rushed to convert their teachings and learning to remote online options. Yet some educators are still unsure of taking on these new adventures for a number of reasons. For example, some of them feel online courses are lower quality and not as effective, although it is not always true. Other teachers admit they have no interesting ideas, they do not know how to translate them into the online course. It is sort of the nuts and bolts of taking a traditional class online, right? They are still learning about content delivery, how technology works, and how they go about getting their class approved to go online. Some teachers often say that, well, their students often aren't self-motivated and fall behind in their class. They also put off participating in a group discussion until the last minutes, which impacts the other group's members who are participating. Okay, so today we're gonna listen to Debbie's presentation, but before we do that, be informed that please everyone mute your audio and turn off the webcam. That's going to be very helpful so we can focus on the presentation. So start your questions there, and Debbie is happy to answer that later in a question and answer period. All right, so Debbie, without further ado, are you ready?
Sure.
All right, Debbie, time is yours.
Hi, you guys. I just wanted to spend a couple of seconds so that you can see my face before I start sharing my screen because I don't think you can see me after that. It's a pleasure to be here. It's 8 p.m. Well, no, 9 p.m. my time, 9 a.m. your time. And so, selamat pagi for those of you in Indonesia.
You still speak
Um,
Indonesian, Debbie?
a little, I remember a little, vocabularies like that
Yeah.
load. I can sort of do that. Anyway, I met Daniel and he talked about the iMookers when I was there. We were working on technology in classrooms. It was a great time working with these guys, and we've stayed in touch since. And we may have another colleague of mine, like Daniel's a colleague from Ukraine joining us, but I think it's 5 a.m. over there, and she may not be up yet. So anyway, so I wanted to say hello. I'm going to start the presentation. We're sort of I have a short video, but I wanted to start give you a little of my background. I mean, Daniel gave you my bio. This past semester, I was teaching professional responsibility for international Master of Law students at Vanderbilt University Law School. And we had a week and a half to move a face-to-face class online, which is, I'm sure, similar to a lot of what happened to you. And even though I have a lot of experience teaching online, that's still tough. We did it. We all did it. But I think, I mean, I certainly know that it was not the best online course I've ever taught. And I think we need to give ourselves a little leeway in understanding when we have to go on that fast and change what we had planned for the semester, it makes a difference. And I think the students understood that. I gave my students some leeway too. We have to be aware that they're going to need a little more understanding in the current situation. We're starting to open up here in the US, even though we shouldn't, but there's still a lot of concern about whether schools can open up in the fall here in the United States. We're not sure what's going to happen. Each school is going to do things very differently. And I'm sure you're going to have similar issues that happen in Indonesia. Our fall starts, if you're in K-12, mid-August. If you're at university, end of August, early September. You're going to see me occasionally look down to the side. I've got Padlet open on my old computer so I can see questions. And I have my phone open but turned off in case Yaroslava, my colleague, shows up. So if you see me look down, that's what I'm doing. Okay? So, and that's another thing to think about when you teach online, because you're limited to the screen. I explain things to students when I do things like start looking to the side so they understand what I'm doing. I think it helps create community because we're all doing things slightly differently. I try to look at the camera so that I'm looking in your faces. If I look at you, if you had your cameras on, then I look like I'm not engaging with you. And we'll talk about that later too. But I'm going to start sharing my desktop and we'll start with some things. If you have trouble with, because I don't know your bandwidth, if you have trouble with things not loading properly, please let someone know. You can put it on Padlet or put it in chat. I can't see the chat, but everybody else can let me know what's being said in chat. So I'm going to share. Let's share my screen. And I think you should now hopefully see can somebody tell me what they see? Do you see a PowerPoint?
No.
Okay, let me fix it. Just a second. I'm going to unshare and share again. I probably picked the wrong thing to share.
Yes, it takes a few seconds, Debbie. Okay, everyone, please turn off your camera so that we can focus on the Debbie's presentation. Turn off your webcam. Okay, everyone, participants, turn off your webcam. Okay, Debbie.
Okay,
so
I'm going. All right. Sorry, I turned it off. I'm sharing again. I'm not sure.
Yeah, now we can read that, Debbie.
All right. You see my PowerPoint, or do you only see the
PowerPoint? I moved my teaching online. Okay, now it's full screen.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay, that's what I wanted to know. So I've moved my teaching online. What now? A lot of people here in the United States who had never taught online were asking that question. I'm sure a lot of you were asking the same question because you'd never taught online before, or it came so suddenly. So I made a little intro video, I wanted to start with this, and I'm going to have to move it over. I think you'll be able to see it. We tested before. Here we go.
While she's in the isolation, have a look.
Hey, so as some of you guys might know, I'm a music teacher, and I found that one of the best ways that I can process the whole transition to online learning and teaching is to write a song. So I wrote a song. I'd like to share that with you guys now. Here we go.
And so,
all right, as much of the world.
You guys, I know a lot of you probably felt very similar when it happened to you. I saw this and died laughing because it was totally appropriate. The next thing I want to do is if you have Mentimeter, if you go to menti.com on your computer, on your phone, and use the code here, I would like to see your answer to a couple of things. And I'll tell you what's being said. Are you guys able to go there? Yes, I'm saying
Yes, select
I'm
as
getting
many as you want in order to prefer, right?
Yep, I'm getting answers. So when I get silent, it's because I'm typing in on my other computer. It looks like a lot of you are using mobile phones, some tablets. There are two questions, you guys. So if you go to the second question, some using desktop computer. Laptop is now winning, mobile phone second. Let me see if I can show you also Mentimeter. Oh, it's not showing my desktop. It's only showing the PowerPoint. That's okay. So right now, a lot of you started teaching online because of the pandemic. That's first choice now. Laptop is first, mobile phone second, for those of you who are joining in. Mobile phone, and I know a lot of your students are going to use mobile phone. That can be problematic. But we deal with what we deal with. I mean, some of my students used iPads in class and iPads for when we went online. So, or a tablet. It didn't have to be an iPad, though most of them were. A lot of you started teaching online because of the global pandemic, and I think a lot of us are in the same. I mean, I had started before, but this semester I certainly started because of the pandemic. It was supposed to be a face-to-face class. So I'm going to go on because what it looks like people have put in laptops, mobile phones, then desktop computer, then fourth, tablets in terms of the ranking of the order. And most of you are saying you started teaching online because of the pandemic. So I'm going to go to the next one. So I created a little video for you guys. You've seen my face live. Now I created a video. And I wanted to play it because when I teach online, I always send a video out to my students. And that's especially true if I'm teaching asynchronously. But I even do it when I'm teaching synchronously. Asynchronous is like an LMS, not a webinar situation, not something like Zoom or Microsoft Teams. So let me go and let you watch this. And somebody needs to turn off their machine.
Debbie.
I'm laughing in part because now I'm on my 8th take of this short little introductory video. I stop them quickly if I make a mistake or something that I say that I don't want to say. I just saw myself look up when I was thinking, but I'm going to keep going because you can't stop every mistake. We have to give ourselves a little leeway. We have to understand that things will not be perfect. They're not perfect in our face-to-face classes. They will not be perfect in our online classes. But many of us went online very quickly this semester. We went from face-to-face classes to online classes with very little time for development. And even though I've been teaching online since 2004, along with face-to-face classes, it's difficult to go online and do a good job in that short amount of time. In fact, I would say it's impossible. So we need to give ourselves a little leeway, understand that our class may not be as good as we expect it to be, but that going forward, we can continue to improve and eventually have a fantastic online class with student engagement. So what we're going to talk about tonight is that engagement and how you can get there. Along the way, I will pause multiple times. You'll see some thought clouds with the option for you guys to use Padlet, chat, or just simply talk on audio on the webinar. And what I want us to do at that point is to share ideas. We're in this together. Let's learn from each other and move forward and make our classes during this global pandemic the best classes we can have. And then going forward, we may decide we really enjoy online learning like I do. And then we've learned a lot of things during the course of teaching these emergency online classes. It's going to be a pleasure talking to you. I'm looking forward to it. Bye. Okay, you guys. So that's oops, sorry, we're not going to listen to it twice. That's my little intro video. It's very similar to the type of thing that I would send out to my class. I would probably give them a little more information about what my expectations, but I really try to keep it short. 2 to 3 minutes max. Studies have shown that 6-minute videos, you'll get 100%, students will listen to 100% of it, and after that, you've got problems. This little icon area, I just wanted to show it to you. Whenever this appears on the PowerPoint, that means I want you guys to take some time to give me your impressions of what's going on in terms of your online teaching, or ask questions. Because I read your survey responses, and a lot of you have great ideas. And the whole point is we're here to share things. In a situation like this, I think that's what we need to do as teachers. We just learn to share with one another and help one another get through what's happening now and continue on with online teaching. So, strategies for success. Let's start in now. So I love this quote. He's a professor of religion, but I think it's really important. If learning online feels to students more like teaching themselves and taking the responsibility for their own learning than they are used to, it is in fact forcing them to do what they really needed to do all along. And I totally believe that. We learn more by teaching others or teaching ourselves. And I just see a question. I think about online teaching and how much time it should take, and we will get to that. I think developing online courses, especially the first time, and especially the first semester you teach one, or the first couple, it seems like it takes more time than a face-to-face class. What I've discovered is it takes me about the same amount of time, but I had to learn to do, if I read it, I respond sort of approach. Don't read it and put it aside, read it, respond. Because if you don't do that, you're going to take so much time. And somebody's mic is on. I've got a lot of feedback. Maybe it was mine. All right. So the first thing you have to do is learn your LMS. Daniel and Amy, who's helping him, were really good and met with me this week, and then we checked in again an hour before the webinar, because you have to learn what you're using, the LMS, the Learning Management System. I've never used Microsoft Teams, but you have to know something about it and how to use it. Use its affordances means you have to be able to understand how to use what's there in the system itself. One of the things that I've noticed is, especially if I'm presenting with my PowerPoint, I can't see participants or hand raises or anything like that anymore, which as an online teacher, I find slightly problematic, but I would get used to it. We use what we are given by our universities, and there are good things about every system and bad things about every system. So learn your system's affordances and how it works. Test your course. We got on and tested this. I have given courses to colleagues before to look at, because that's important. Keep cell phone use in mind. People are looking at your course on a cell phone or an iPad. I find that difficult when you're taking an online course to do everything on a small phone, but we know it's going to happen. And also, contact your university tech team or the tech savvy teachers at your university. If there is no tech team you can talk to. But all of that becomes really important as we go forward, is making sure we understand the LMS. Does anybody have a question? Okay. So course design, just like all course design, you guys, we're looking at things like Bloom's Taxonomy, and I teach advanced students for the most part. I mean, they're in law schools or they're graduate students at Vanderbilt University. You're going to have a different audience, but I always try to hit the top 3. Those are the most important for me: analyze, evaluate, create. And there are a lot of resources that are out there on the web that I'm going to share that are useful when you start using apps online. So let's move to some of that. I'm not going to explain Bloom's Taxonomy. I assume you know it. If not, there is a link here, and I will share the PowerPoint at the end of the presentation and a couple of PDFs that I have. So the taxonomy verbs, I love videos when I'm teaching. And when you look at create, design, modify, role play, develop, rewrite, invent, write, analyze is when you contrast, connect, evaluate, you criticize, you reframe, you judge, you prioritize. All of those verbs help us understand the levels of Bloom's taxonomy. And if you're writing goals, if you look at some of these verbs, they can be very helpful. And there are lots. All you have to do is Google Bloom's taxonomy verbs, and you find a lot of them online. So let's talk about this. And this is where things may slow down. And I think I may have just shared my PowerPoint. So I am going to, because I did that, I'm going to unshare and share my desktop. So you guys, I'm unsharing the screen for a minute. You're going to see me. And I'm going to share again. So just give me a second as I share. Oh, now I see raised hand, but I can't see it when I'm, desktop. Perfect. That's what I wanted to share, is my desktop. All right. So now we're going to look at Kathy Schrock's Guide to Bloom Leveled Apps. And this is one of the things I really like. Somebody else has done the work for me. So it's going to take a second, you guys. Just give it a minute. But her website will open. She has a lot of information on this website. I'm going to scroll slowly. All right. So I'm going to stop here for a second. If you cannot see the apps yet, there's the title at the top is iPad Apps to Support Bloom's Revised Taxonomy. And she does it by creating, evaluating, analyzing, applying. And she gives you various apps that you can use for the iPad. So those are iPad apps. I've used Quizlet before, of course, mind mapping, of course, Google search for the low-level skills. And then up at the top, Canva is one of my favorites. We'll get to that later. Storytelling is great. So all of these work, and you can look at them later. Android apps are here if you have Androids. Same idea. A lot of the apps overlap now between iPad, OS, Apple devices, and any type of tablet. Online tools, you can do a lot of the same things online. Here they are. So keep in mind, there's a lot out there that you guys can use that's already been created. A good Google search will help. One of the good things is have students look. This one I think you guys will really enjoy, the differentiator. What I find it very interesting is, can everybody see this now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You see? Okay, perfect. So I'm going to click to edit. And what you can do is I'm trying to move this meeting thing out of the way because I think you can see it now. All right. So students let's say I want to create. So I'm going to change it. Or no, let's not do that. Students will, let's do analyzing. Examine. Let's do examine. The use of body language, because when I teach speaking, I have students think about body language. in their chosen TED Talk. I have them look at TED Talks, find ones they like, and have them present the TED Talk and tell me what they like and don't like about it in terms of body language, why they like that presenter. And I say using class notes because we would have already talked about what makes a good body language. And then I would have them create a bullet list, not an essay, a bullet list that highlights the best use of body language during the talk. So if I close that, then it changes. And so you can see that. And so there is one of the things, and I just chose one of these verbs to do it. So that's a good way to think about how to set things up. If you've never seen the differentiator, I think it's really kind of cool because it helps us as teachers when we're overwhelmed with so much going on with classes and the number of students. I had 69 students in my class that I had to move online so quickly, and I had already had them working in teams to answer questions because it was a law class, so there are a lot of questions they had to present on the cases we were discussing and then answer different questions from students and from me. That was a little bit hard to move online. We did it, but I had to really think through how to do that. So, and then another website you can use, I'm not going to show you now, is the Arizona State University's Integrating Technology with Bloom's Taxonomy. So another way to think about how to move forward. So basics of engagement, and you guys, a lot of you said this when you answered the survey. The top basics: communicate, be present, be timely, be yourself, and put yourself in your student's shoes. And I want to ask you right now what that means. All right, so what did those ideas mean to you? I already saw some on survey, but use chat, use Padlet, use the audio, and tell me what you think before I go into it. And I'm just going to say, this is what I say to my students. I'm just going to sit here and be silent until I see somebody say something or somebody starts talking.
So you ask everyone to put their ideas on Padlet. You said that right, Debbie?
On Padlet, or they can talk. They can unmute themselves.
All right. Okay, good. So everyone, you're welcome to express your ideas to Debbie right now. Unmute your audio. So Debbie is asking us, what do these ideas mean? Okay, please. Go ahead. Hey, Debbie, there are some iMookers here. I noticed Maria Tamara, Mbak Maria, Mbak Puji, and also, what is that? Tiara. Okay, yes, please.
Hey, you guys.
Come on. Speak up, guys. iMookers.
Please put something on Padlet.
Yeah.
What does it mean to communicate? If you're here, to engage and be active. Yeah. Somebody just said that on Padlet. I agree. Also stay focused and communicate through everything. Yes, keep your students informed, because if you don't communicate when you're online, it's tough. Great response there. That's one. I'm going to wait for 3 people. This is sort of what teaching online's like. It takes a while. We, because we're only meeting for 2 hours, don't have time to build the relationship that, of course, you build with students over time. But I'm treating you like I know you, because this is eventually how you have to sort of teach online. Students have to feel comfortable. So I hear somebody's sounds off, so somebody talk to me. Is to understand and be understood. I agree. Somebody just said that on Padlet. I think that makes perfect sense. To understand is to understand and be understood. And I think Communicating gives chance for students to play their role more instead of the teachers. Yes. So a lot of that works. What about putting yourself in your students' shoes? How are we going to do that? What does that mean? I mean, we can think of ways to do it, but what does it mean exactly? Involves speaker and listener, yeah. Be present means that we make sure we're interacting with the students. Yeah. Pay attention to the students. Yes.
Can I
Texting,
say something?
teleconferencing. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. I think the last sentence, the last statement, like put yourself in your student's shoes, it relates with how you give instructions to your students, because sometimes if it is an asynchronous class, when we ask students to do something, like we are giving a task, for example, to them, and then if we do not give them a clear instruction, usually the students do not know what to do. So in my opinion, if you put yourself in your students' shoes, you also need to know what you want your students do.
Exactly.
Yes,
That's perfect. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's so much. It's sort of like when we give instructions in class, like if we hand out an assignment, we don't just hand out the assignment, we explain it.
Yes, exactly. Yes, because sometimes, the students sometimes can ask us questions through the platform or through other media. But if still, when the first time when they open the online class, and then if there are no instruction whatsoever, they don't know what to do. So we cannot just put, for example, today's topic is introducing yourself, and then no other instructions, or the instructions that we give is simply talk about yourself in 5 minutes, for example. But we
Right.
do not put any details like, okay, you should include A, B, C. Or sometimes we also need to give an example, like in a video. We can take a video from YouTube or other information. I think.
No, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. I think examples, I think telling them at least the minimum of things to include. Often I'll tell them what to include, and then I will say something like, and add one interesting thing about yourselves. So that interesting thing gives them a way to then add something different, so that they're not all just giving me their name, their major, and things like that.
Yes.
So I like to do that, to give them, but I like to tell them what to include. Otherwise, they do what the first person did.
Yes, exactly. And they can communicate. I mean, they can ask their friends, "What did you say?" If it is a synchronous class, yeah. So a clear instruction for me is the most important thing if it is an online asynchronous class.
Right. And I usually give examples, like I will introduce myself and include an interesting thing about myself. You know, not just my professional bio, for example. I will include personal information if I want the students to do that.
Yeah.
So I try to model what I want them to do.
Yeah.
So perfect. I like that. That's great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, you guys. I'm going to move on, but thank you very much. I love that. Everybody, please keep talking. I'm going to move that out of the way. My little screen. So communicate, staying connected, like all of you have said. Send an email before class or during a pandemic transition. One of the things that surprised me from my students this semester was that they said I was one of the few, if not the only professor who emailed them. I mean, we didn't know as professors what was going on because the school didn't know, because things were changing so quickly. But I said, I don't know. Here's what I know today, and I will get back to you as soon as I learn something else. So I feel like sometimes we need to let them know, because they were confused and getting limited information, or sometimes too much information. So I think that's important for us to think about, especially in a situation like we've just had, where it was an emergency online transition. And somebody else mentioned multiple modes of communication in the Padlet chat. I gave, and I often still in face-to-face classes, give my students my phone number. You don't have to. If I'm an adjunct instructor now because I'm retired, yay, but I still enjoy teaching, so I still teach. I give them my personal email. I mean, normally I don't give them my personal email, but because things were changing so quickly with the pandemic, I gave students my personal email. I give my phone number out. Well, if I do that, the WhatsApp, they're going to have my phone. I will text chat with students. Not all students want to give you phone numbers or do any of that. That's totally fine. It's totally voluntary. Teachers don't have to do this. That was my choice. I was not abused. Even though I gave my phone, my email, I got one call, and the student should have called because I had not checked my Vanderbilt email. And so I could tell she was nervous, but it was perfect. I said, you did the exact right thing. That's why I gave you my phone number. Because my student groups who were presenting, I had them in groups of 5, had to also write an outline together to present, to give to the rest of the class. Law school exams are different from English exams. It's a summative exam. There's one exam at the end of the semester. Professional responsibility is normally a multiple choice exam because that's the type of exam they have to take. And so I was trying to help them prepare for this professional exam they were taking but it's been postponed, so they're not taking it now. The pandemic changes everything. Also check into your course frequently. I logged in to my course daily, and I always do when I'm teaching. Logging in daily doesn't mean I spend hours in the course, because that was one of the questions. Online teaching the first time can feel like it takes longer, and it probably does the first semester, especially if you're trying to develop and teach at the same time, like many of us have done this semester. But it doesn't after you get used to it. Just touch it and answer it and move on. Don't just read it 3 or 4 times before you answer. That takes more time. I give examples for discussion responses. I respond to examples that I think are really good and then share that good example with the other students so they know. I actually email reminders and class updates, even though they can see it on the LMS. It's different when you're online. You have to build that connection, and that connection takes more communication. I often include short video clips to explain things, like I will use Screencast-O-Matic if I'm using an app that the students might not understand. I keep my videos to less than 5 minutes, and it has to relate to something they're using for the week. I don't try to give them random videos. I say that, but sometimes I do give them a random video just because I think it's funny. Because occasionally you've got to inject some humor. Set clear course expectations, and that is like clear instructions, which we just heard. Students need to know what you expect. One of the biggest problems for me when I went online was 30% of my course grade was class participation because it was a law class, and that's expected. But it was really hard to handle that in a group of 69 students in a Zoom class where I had 5 pages of students there. I mean, I could see hand raises and things like that, but I couldn't see the faces of everyone like we can in a face-to-face class. I still kept notes, but I finally decided that I was using their presentations and what they had done before, and I would totally rethink having that percentage, that high a percentage of participation, unless I had discussion forums. That's different. I could pay attention to that, but certainly not in a synchronous class. I would not have in a 69-person class, 30% participation grade. So we always have to think about how things might change when we're able to do that. I let my students know about the participation changes because I have to keep them up to date with how the course is changing. And that's the whole thing about communication. All right, be present, post weekly announcements. I didn't necessarily do a summary of what we had done, but I always did an overview of things that I thought were important that students said. It's short, you guys. It's like a paragraph. And when I say paragraph, I use bullet points because I think the students don't have time to read it. They have a lot of classes, and I want to make sure that they understand what was gone over, what I expect them to understand from what we went over, and move on from there. I had online office hours. I had a schedule. I also let students make appointments. I do the same thing in face-to-face classes. There's absolutely no reason not to do it online. Microsoft Teams, Zoom, any of that works. But the Skype, no problem. Talk with, and notice I highlighted the talk with students. Talk with means don't talk at, don't just give them instructions, but have a conversation, because we need to model the conversational style, because we're trying to have social presence inside the class. One of the things students miss in online classes many times is the interaction with their peers, with fellow students prior to class, and having conversations and enabling conversations between students in discussion forums sometimes, or having a separate discussion forum that is for students only. Their coffee shop or something is very useful in an asynchronous class. I love synchronous sessions. I totally think adding synchronous sessions, it doesn't have to be for the whole class, but every second or third week, if it's primarily asynchronous, can be really useful when you're teaching to build social presence inside a class. And when I say social presence, I'm talking about the community of inquiry framework, which is one of the frameworks used to help design asynchronous classes. It's social presence, cognitive presence, and teaching presence, or teacher presence. So they all have to intermix to have the educational outcome you're looking for. The other thing is be timely. Please grade, comment on, return work in a timely fashion. Where I taught, when I was teaching full-time at Vanderbilt, we were supposed to turn around papers or student work in 3 days. That was the expectation. Now, sometimes I took a week, to be honest, but I had it done as quickly as I could get it done. I respond to questions, email, text, however they send it to me, within 24 hours. Some people say I can't do 24 hours, I need 48. 48's fine, 24 is better. Remember, if you go online, you see something, they email, you answer it, and you're done with it. I post videos often in my online classes, even when they're asynchronous, to clarify misconceptions, explain a difficult topic. I can link out to a YouTube video that does what I think is a much better job than I could do, but I also create my own videos. Creating your own YouTube channel is free, and I make all of my videos unlisted, which means they're not searchable, but the link is open to the public. I mean, I make videos for my classes. I don't make them for people to watch randomly. I'm not a YouTube star, but I do think it's important for us to present ourselves and actually have students use YouTube videos. They can post their own. Just give them some guidelines about what you expect, how long it should be. And all of that is helpful. The students get to know one another. So, questions about that? Is that the type of things, and I'll go back and look at them really. So be timely, be present, and communicate. So those are the three we're talking about. Communicate, be present, be timely. What do you guys have to add to that? Because I know you have great ideas. I gave you a couple of things I do. What else do you do to create the community in an online class? Community in an online class is hard to build, but essential. And so you can unmute yourself, you can type on Padlet. I taught in Finland, so I had to get used to a minute before people answered, but you guys are like, I've been in the US for a while now, and we have no time. You're supposed to immediately answer. So I'm just waiting. But it's hard for me. I just want you to know. Does anybody have online office hours? Ah, WhatsApp group. Perfect. Yeah. I've done that. I think a WhatsApp group is great. We did that with the iMookers. We had a WhatsApp group when I was there. I mean, we could do the traditional things like have students write a blog journal. I mean, I like students to journal. I don't necessarily think they need to blog all the time, but I'll talk about that in a bit. Anybody do something other than a WhatsApp group? You could do, I mean, what is it? Facebook now has a group. There's all sorts of stuff people can do in groups now because of changes. I even think Google did something. I think I saw something on my Gmail account recently that came across that people could do. Apps are changing all the time. It's the Edmodo. I mean, Edmodo you could use too. No, Edmodo not. We had Google Duo now, and then Facebook now has groups where you can communicate with your Facebook friends. Not that I friend my students necessarily. Ah, good. You're using chatting in that. Good, Christine. Perfect. Yeah, go ahead, talk, please. I hear somebody's going to talk. Oh, perfect. I see you now. Go on and tell us what you think. I see somebody, but I don't hear anybody. Okay. So what are you saying, Daniel, in Microsoft Teams? Because I can't see it. As a presenter, we can't see the chat. That's one of the real drawbacks of Microsoft Teams, in my view.
That's
and
right.
I view it as almost a bad drawback. So what are people saying, Daniel? Anything? Daniel.
Yes.
Give me some examples,
Debby.
types of things people are saying they do to be present, communicate, and be timely.
Okay, so usually we have a learning management system,
Right.
which is like MS Team. This is both synchronous mode and also asynchronous mode, Debbie. So we keep the materials in MS Team and give the time for the student to do their homework using MS Team. And we can create like Google Docs there, but this is a MS Doc, and the students can do their homework there. But also we can do sometimes chatting on the MS Team chat box, Debbie. So, but then we need to make an appointment. Hey, students, you have to be present at 9 o'clock, for example, and they have to be there. But first of all, before we start doing discussions, Debbie, so I want them to put their names. Number 1, Andy. Number 2, Tommy. So by doing so, I can see that they are present as well. So then we create discussion using chat box, and I develop questions that provoke their, their minds to think critically, maybe.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think chatting, using whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. I mean, I think chatting works. I think live chatting back and forth, the
That's
real time stuff is better.
Yeah.
You get more engagement. Because, like, one of the problems with discussion forums in asynchronous classes for me is people answer right up front, and then they wait and nobody responds to them and they feel like they were ignored. or people answer at the very end and nobody responds to them. And so that's where it really becomes a teacher management issue, where you have to actually point out, hey, X has a really great comment. What do you guys think? Before students will respond.
Yes.
And so in that sense, I think asynchronous discussion forums are a little difficult. I think they take more time for teachers.
That's right, Debby.
Than the real-time chat. That's why I'm a synchronous. I like both. I like blended learning. There are really good things for asynchronous. I think discussions are great,
Yes.
or present in-depth information. And I'm going to allow somebody wants to say something, I'm going to permit them. Okay, that's Rula.
Hey, Debby, one more thing. So
Yeah.
this semester, I tried to build an online community. I think you have asked a very good question, Debby. And this semester, I asked the student to, I assign them to be the facilitators. And then also, this is especially the discussion on the Canvas, Debby. So I let them to take control of the discussion. So their friends answer the questions I give on Canvas, right? And the other students give comments. And they do that every week, Debby, depending on the discussion.
Oh, that's one of my favorite things. Yeah, to have student moderators for discussion forums.
That's right. Yeah.
It works really well. I mean, you have to help them learn how to do it, just like you have to help students learn how to do a peer review of a paper. But once they figure it out, it's great. It works well. Excellent. All right. So now I'm going to go on, unless somebody else has more comments. Okay. So you've got to be yourself. You guys are seeing me as I am. When you saw me visually before, I'm in my sewing studio. I'm a quilter. So I didn't put a virtual background back there, even though sometimes you can do that, because I want students I just read an article today about comedians, newscasters, a lot of people broadcasting from their homes now. And people are really interested in the books they have, because apparently libraries are where a lot of people like to present, in front of their bookcases. Well, my bookcases are in the basement and it's dark, so I'm in my studio. But teachers have, in the U.S., I'm talking U.S. culturally, there is definitely a line that students can't cross in terms of becoming too familiar with a teacher. But I think it's probably closer. That line is closer to the teacher than it is in Indonesia. But I think in order to build community, sometimes you have to, as a teacher, as a professor, allow the students inside your personal life, not telling them details, but, letting them see the inside of your house if you're online and you're teaching from home. It's sort of like if they come to your office, they can see what you have in your office, what you include there. It's sort of just let yourself be yourself. Learn to be authentic. And so I'm going to show part of this authenticity is how you approach things. I created this, and I'm going to stop it. It's I use Screencast-O-Matic. You can see down there. Screencast-O-Matic, great webcasting software. It's free for 15 minutes. I use it all the time. And it's perfect when you're teaching online and very easy to use. Unbelievably easy. So what this is, the video shows how people talk in synchronous classes. And it shows, engagement is key. Like, you want to be talking to your students, which means you can't look at your screen. You've got to look at the camera. And I'm going to show this, and we're going to talk about various issues that happen when you teach online. So I'm just going to play this, and let's see how it goes. I'll pause it on occasion.
I want to start today with a question for Dr. Redfield. Doctor, when we consider this challenge in our families want basic transparency. And that's one of the reasons why Senator Wyden and I sent you a letter dated April the 2nd. It was directed to you as well as the administrator of the Centers on Medicare Medicaid Services, Seema Verma.
Okay, so what did you guys notice about this? All right. What did you notice about that guy? He looked to me like he was talking to me. Okay. Did you guys see that? Yes, no? But I did hear people with dishes in the background, like they were eating breakfast or something. I don't know if he's in his dining room, but you know, things like that are going to happen. I might have said something. But look at this next guy. Tell me what you think about his body language when he's online.
Long-term care facilities have been particularly hard hit by this pandemic.
So what about him? Long-term care facilities, what do you think?
He's not drawing your attention?
No, he's looking up. And I look up when I think he's thinking. But you know, in my intro video, I said I felt myself look up, but I kept going. So as long as you feel it and look back at the screen, that's okay. Not the screen, the camera. But yeah, he's not drawing your attention. He's not paying attention to you as a listener. And these are not teachers. These are politicians who are doing a hearing on the coronavirus in Congress. But I'm going to show you another couple.
States or cities or regions, their attempt, understandable, to get back to some form of normality, disregard to a great degree the checkpoints that we put in our guidelines.
Yeah, so what about him? He's an expert, a real expert on coronavirus in the U.S. What was he doing? Was he looking at the audience?
He's probably looking at the screen.
Yeah,
he seems like looking at the other, I don't know, something on his left side.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is.
2 or 3 computers up there.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I watched the whole hearing. He never once made eye contact with his camera, which means eye contact with his audience.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And it makes a difference. And it's so easy. I mean, it's hard to watch the camera because you really want to look at the screen. But we have to try to remember to look at the audience too. That's how I look at it. So we're going to look at another.
I want to ask you if you believe that we already have a national testing strategy today that spans from the nationwide assessment to the nationwide testing supply assessment and a strategy to fill that gap.
So what about the last speaker? What did you think about her?
She was making eye contact, but from time to time.
Right. I think she had a long thing to read. That was what she was trying to read, but she would at least glance at the camera.
Yeah.
And she actually glanced at the camera more often than you would expect. Because I wanted more of that was just one piece. But we're all we have something we're going to look away and read and then glance back. But did you guys notice? Have you guys noticed that now about getting feedback? Yeah. So I think one of the things that we have to pay attention to as instructors is, I don't know why that's doing that. Okay, hold on. I can't get out of I can't find my mouse. Loop, I don't want to loop. Oh, no, don't loop. Sorry, now I'm talking to myself. I can't get off the screen.
I sent you a letter.
Ah, thank goodness. Okay, now I am. All right. So we have to be careful. My cats are going to walk in front of the screen. I've got the door shut. They can't. You might hear my husband say something because we're working from home, but we try to limit. The first speaker, I thought he did the best in terms of eye contact. He had some dishes and the background noise. Was it that disturbing? No. But my personal opinion, his was the best eye contact. He probably had more experience, like newscasters have more experience with that. And maybe he's been on the news more than the others. I don't know. Fauci, love Fauci, but he had no eye contact at all. Don't watch the other speakers. Don't look up as you think. Try not to read. Those are not absolutes. We are going to do all of these things on occasion. Just remember to go back and look at the camera, because looking at the camera builds a stronger connection with your students, and you have to train yourself to do it, because that is not where I hear motorcycles. I'm not sure what that was. When mistakes happen, acknowledge them and use humor. This cat is now famous in the U.S. because this weather forecaster was doing the weather at home and his cat walked in front of the screen. So now the cat sits with him for every newscast. So I'm going to do, oops, sorry, it didn't work. I'm going to try to click on this. It took a little while to load. It may be too long. We'll see. Acknowledge what's going on is what I'm saying. Acknowledge the humor. Okay, here we go.
And she hasn't been able to get a test yet, and I last saw her on Thursday. So it's been a week since I've seen her. Hi, this is my cat. That is the perks of working from home.
So things happen. Just laugh and move on. I won't show you the Brody. It's a dog that now sits with, and the weather forecaster, again, he talked to the dog, he talked to the audience, he talked to the dog. It's funny. But you guys will have a copy of this so you can look at them later. So asynchronously, because a lot of you teach only asynchronously, my take is you have to use a conversational tone. I write to my student, not if I'm teaching academic writing. Let's be clear here. If I'm teaching academic writing, when I write to them, it depends on what I'm saying. If it's an email explaining something, I use a conversational tone. If it's an assignment, I use an academic tone. So, but I write to my students as I would speak to them in class when I'm writing emails. If you're presenting yourself and not an academic article, should you use emojis, exclamation marks, text talk? One of the big questions here at Vanderbilt, it's been for several years now, is student use of exclamation marks. Text talk, the short forms of words, are you, like the letter R and then the letter U, nobody really allows. Emojis, some teachers don't care. Exclamation marks, there is no way to get away from them. Teachers will say, "Dear Professor Lee," exclamation mark. "How are you today?" "I'm fine," exclamation mark. And you can't avoid it. It's sort of like it has become so all over the place that it's impossible to avoid using exclamation marks. Somebody just asked, can narratives enhance learning? Yes. I'm going to talk about narratives. Narratives are really important. Examples, things that you have done, experienced, makes a world of difference. And having students tell their narratives, using storytelling is extremely important in learning. Storytelling works when you're academic writing, if you're at a graduate level at a university like Vanderbilt in the US, depends on your discipline. Some disciplines, storytelling is essential. In other disciplines, especially the hard sciences, engineering, there is little storytelling in their academic writing. And that's where we as teachers, professors, have to understand what our students, what we're teaching them to produce. Remember, I'm teaching in a U.S. setting, international students who are taking academic degrees in English. So what I'm trying to teach them is English to succeed in their academic field. So because of that, I have to be careful in terms of what I tell them is appropriate, because when I taught academic writing, I couldn't tell an engineer to use narrative because I read their journal articles, and that is not how they write. Not that I understood their journal articles, but as an English teacher, I could analyze how they were put together. And that's part of our job. When I was dealing with education students, graduate students, they could use narrative. That was fine. So you really have to look at how it works. Narrative helps a lot simply by providing context, making things clear. I think sometimes education writing should be clearer, or engineering and medical science articles, because engineers and especially the medical sciences have to get grant money. And if you can't explain yourself in a narrative form so that someone with the money understands, you're going to have trouble getting those grants, and that becomes important. I'm not sure that I answered your question about how narrative enhances learning. I think narratives provide context, just like the next one is paragraph style necessary. It's context driven. What do you need? What do the students need to succeed is always the question I ask myself. And I don't mean succeed just in my class. I mean succeed in the university and succeed when they leave the university. So for me, the question goes beyond what's necessary for them to pass a class. It goes, how can they succeed? And I think narrative learning helps that. And there are a lot, I read an article before this about, it was by an Indonesian professor, and I'll send it along. It was a really good article about how narrative storytelling enhances learning. For English, you can do all sorts of things. You know how they used to do fill in the comics sort of thing. Law schools use narratives all the time through examples, through cases, through experiences the law professors have had in various legal issues. It provides students a way to understand the world. When you're talking English, if you're trying to teach the difference between the present perfect and the past, the simple past, I've actually used my experiences in learning French when I'm talking about that to explain why it's important. And also, I understand how difficult it is, if that makes any sense. So all of that is extremely important, providing useful information in an accessible format. So questions other than how narrative can enhance learning, and did I answer that question, which I'm not sure. Any questions about that? I've done a lot asynchronously. I prefer blended, which is a blend of synchronous, asynchronous, but I've done a lot of just synchronous and just and blended. So what other questions do you guys have about that? Because all of this is about student engagement, and student engagement is what you need. If you have to grab them. It has to become important to them too. We're professors. We love what we're teaching. Our students don't necessarily love what we're teaching, especially if they're required classes. They just have to be there. So I'm not saying you need to become an entertainer, but you need to make it clear to students why what they're learning is important. It's sort of like that's why math teachers have had so much trouble so many years. Why do we have to know algebra? Well, give them real examples about how algebra is important, because it can be. Geometry, I think, is more important, but algebra can be. Narratives with low English proficiency, you have to gear the narrative to the student level. All right, your examples have to scaffold language, use language that you are trying to get them to understand, have them write stories using that language based on their own life experience. But it can help students with low English proficiency, but you have to gear it to their level. You can't have them write a 10-page paper. You know, you have them write bullet points or sentences that connect what you're trying to teach them, whether it's grammar, whether it's vocabulary, but it definitely can be done. And that's where the comic strip idea comes in. And in other words, I don't know if you guys remember the books that have the pictures where students have to fill in what people are saying. That's what I mean when I say the comic strip idea. But it has to, of course, repeat what you're trying to get them to know. Oops. Sorry, I went the wrong way. Put yourself in your students' shoes, you guys. Treat your students like adults. They are, I mean, most of you are university professors. They are adults. Communicate your goals. Clear instructions. If you use examples, explain what's good, what's bad. I mean, sometimes I use examples that have both positive and negative things. When I have students do peer reviews, and I have students peer review papers, we do a couple of papers in class together first. If we're face-to-face, we do it in class. We do it synchronously. We can do it asynchronously. But they have to understand, and what I have found is students 99% of the time give a paper a worse score than I would give it, because they see all the bad things rather than the good things that are there in that paper too. Now, when we review papers, I normally don't let students look at grammar necessarily. I'm looking at more organizational, topic, sentence, thesis statement, good examples, that sort of thing. Is it coherent? I'm looking for coherence more than grammar. Grammar is sometimes students create more problems than they help. I explain why I'm doing different activities. I told my students this semester why I was making them work together to create an outline to give to the rest of the class. Because one of the easiest ways to study for law school exams is to have study groups, because it's all problem-based. And international students are not good at getting together in study groups to do this. And I said, this is the one way for 1 week I can force you to work together to create the outline that you need to create to prep for your final exam. And so that's why we're doing it. So once I explained that, they did great outlines. They were prepared. Nobody was unprepared for their presentations. It was perfect. If you're online, you can do a short video explaining its assignments. I mean, that would have probably taken more than 2 minutes, but keep it 6 minutes or under. Ask for feedback. At the English Language Center, we always did midterm feedback from students. We did a needs analysis at the beginning of every class. We did midterm feedback saying things like, what is working, what isn't working? I mean, 2 questions. That's all you have to ask. What else do you think we need to cover? I mean, I don't think I asked that. I usually said, what has worked well for you in the class so far? What else would you like to see covered this semester? Or were my 2 midterm questions. And I got a lot of interesting responses from that. And so keep in mind, students as adults, they like to be listened to also, not just us. That's why I like to hear from you guys. You have great ideas. I think hearing from you helps us all. It helps me, it helps you, it helps everyone. So before I get to my favorites of apps and things I've used, tell me how you think you could put yourself in your students' shoes and asynchronously use conversational tones. What could you do? What else can you do?
Debbie, this is quite interesting when you say that we as teachers also need to listen to the students. So we also need to have students' feedback, right?
Right.
So this is something that a lot of teachers have ignored, Debbie. So I think what feedback is the thing that the teachers have to give correction, and giving feedback to the students, some things like that. But receiving feedbacks from the student is something that teachers are not fully aware of.
Well, I have to say, it's not always pleasant.
Yeah.
But students don't think our feedback to them is pleasant either, necessarily.
Yeah, that's right.
But I've learned something every time. And so you get used to it. You know, it's not, I mean, basically students, I won't say all of them, most students want to learn, or they wouldn't be at university. Okay. Sometimes life gets in the way and it appears that they don't want to learn, but we have to keep that in mind too. During the pandemic, people have trouble getting access to the internet. People have trouble here in the States putting food on the table because everybody's losing their jobs. I mean, we're at high unemployment now. And yeah, I have to think about that when I'm thinking about how to, in fact, the law school decided, unheard of almost in law schools around, well, especially in the US, they went pass fail. Instead of grading students, we either pass them or fail them, and that is unheard of in a law school. So, you know, all sorts of things happened because of the pandemic that are very unusual, and I'm curious to see how it goes forward. But especially during the pandemic, I talked to the students at the beginning of every class to ask them how they were doing, if they were having issues, how could I help. There are a lot of Chinese students. Some of them had been harassed in Nashville. So I got in contact with the Vanderbilt office in charge of that and said, you know, we've got to do something to stop this, to help our students feel safe because they don't feel safe. And but if I hadn't asked the students about that, I wouldn't have found out because the law school didn't know until I told them, because the students weren't saying anything. But that's what I mean. It's not like it, and it didn't take me, you know, it's not time consuming to ask students what's going on, especially in a situation like now. I think that becomes important. So I just had a question pop up on Padlet. A lot of research confirms that teacher feedback outperforms other types of feedback. How can it increase student engagement and quality teaching? I think teacher feedback in particular helps when, after you've given the students feedback, for example, on a paper, you meet face-to-face with that student. After every paper I marked for a student, I met them face-to-face so I could see what they were trying to say. Because sometimes what they were trying to say just wasn't clear in their syntax, for example. And we could talk, and I could say to them, what you just said to me is what you should have written on the paper. I also think when you do peer review, and the peer review focuses on cohesion, and then you have the students talk to each other after, that makes a world of difference. I've done that in presentation classes where students would talk through the organization of their presentation for the entire class before they presented, and the students would offer suggestions or explain how they didn't know what they were talking about. And I was sitting there, but I let the students take the lead, and that worked wonders. Had some fabulous presentations after that. So I think it boils down to time spent, helping students understand how to do peer review, and also not just giving written feedback, but oral feedback. Some studies have even shown that talking to students, like even for a paper, like recording yourself, talking through their paper makes a difference. And I've done that. What students really liked in presentation classes and speaking classes was audio feedback on their presentations. And I use something like Screencast-O-Matic. I can pause it and then talk about what the student had just done, whether it was pronunciation, whether it was organization, whether it was grammatical, and then we could continue the presentation. And that works with screencasting. It works with Screencast-O-Matic. Students like that kind of thing. Does it take me longer to do that? A little. Do I think it's worthwhile for the students? Yes. So for me, it became a matter of, if it's worthwhile for the students, I'm willing to put the time in. And the reason it took longer was not that it took longer to comment that way. When you create a video, you have to download it and upload it. That's what takes the time. So you just do something else while the video's formatting itself. I don't know if I answered your question, Anonymous. I think teacher feedback does outperform. I don't think it's the only thing that students should be aware of, because when they get out into the world, it's going to be team feedback, boss feedback, peer feedback. So I think they need to learn how to do it, and that's one of our jobs. And I think it helps engagement, and we're talking about engagement. But you have to train them. They do a really bad job up front, I will tell you. It's awful. So it takes training. You have to train the students on how to do it, how you do it. So we're going to talk about my favorites in terms of apps, unless you guys have something else to add.
One more thing, Debbie.
Sure.
I got a question from the teacher, sent the message to my WhatsApp. So Debbie, when it comes to developing or creating a movie, how long should the movie last, Debbie? Because stitches are difficult to, is it 5 minutes? Is it 10 minutes? Is it more than 10 minutes? What do you think about that, Debbie?
Me, I think it's short. There's a movie that I'm going to show you in a minute that it was for high school students, but they were 1 to 2 minutes. So if you give somebody something very specific, I think 5 minutes works. I think if you do more than 5 minutes, people aren't going to watch the whole video. 5 to 6 minutes. Studies have shown 6 minutes, 100 people will watch 100% of the video. And that's the whole point. You want people to watch the whole video. Have I made longer videos? Yes. And somebody says, how can, so 10 minutes max, and I don't even recommend 10 minutes. 6 is good. How can I maintain online classes if connection matters for my students? What we've been talking about, they have to know that you care about them. You have to create things like WhatsApp groups so that they can connect outside of class. All of that counts. So you have to find a way to make yourself real to those students by showing them how to make themselves real online. So the things I'm telling you today, I tell my students. I tell them to look at the camera, not the screen, if they're presenting. I give them the same tips I'm giving you because they need to be able to build that connection too. It takes time. I am not going to tell you it is easy to build community in an online class. It takes a lot, time in the sense of not more time than face-to-face, but it takes more thought process on our part as teachers. I do competitions, I do team activities, I have them create videos together. I had the students in groups of 5 create their outlines together. They got to know each other well. That's what I'm talking about. That type of build smaller communities inside a class. I let the students pick their own partners. I didn't assign partners. I mean, I have assigned partners before, lower students with slightly lower, so they learn together. But I actually have decided I like students picking their own partners. It works better. Yep, another question?
Yes, Debbie. Anyone, please ask question to Debbie before we're going to listen to the next presentation slide. Please.
Yeah,
you can
please.
Unmute your audio, please.
And if I don't answer your question, ask me again. I'm okay with that. I'm seeing nothing on Padlet and I'm hearing no noise. So I'm going to show this student video. I think she's in 8th grade. Another first place winner was from Guam. She spoke a little too quickly, but it's really good, really short. And I'll get
the
to your
world will
question.
have 150 through 200 million climate change migrants by 2050. For example, the tropical cyclone Idai and subsequent flooding damaged 100,000 homes, destroyed 1 million acres of crops, and demolished $1 billion worth of infrastructure in Mozambique. Mozambique had to house 146,000 people in 155 temporary sites, and 1.85 million people needed assistance. By 2050, the world population is expected to reach 9.8 billion.
So I'm going to stop, but that you can see it's a minute video. Student created, won first prize, so they don't have to be long. And you don't always have to teach students how to make their own videos. Students are very good at creating videos, but I do think there's a good question that relates to this that just came up on Padlet. How do you think we should support the technological gap that older students in master's or doctorate programs often suffer from? And I think that's important because I also feel like it's our job as teachers to help people become literate in today's society, and that literacy includes understanding technology and using it to its best advantage. One of the things that I work really hard to do is stay up to date on tech, because I know if I don't, I am going to get behind very, very quickly. I just added, for example, on my television, I added in an exercise program. I have a Roku, which is streaming TV, because I can't go to the gym, they're closed. And I thought I was going to lose my mind figuring it out, but I know how to Google. So one of the things that I think you can do is teach your students how to Google the answer. When I first started in technology, using technology, I wanted everyone to tell me exactly how to do it. I was taught by a professor who made me crazy, but I love him now. That one of the most important things that I had to do was learn to Google and find the answer myself. If I couldn't find the answer in help or by Googling, then I could come to him. And now the first thing I do, I go to YouTube. There are YouTube videos on almost everything. I Google, I use help functions in LMSs and all sorts of stuff. It makes a world of difference. And I think that's one of the things that will frustrate your older students in master's and doctoral programs if you send them away and say, you can find this. But I think as a teacher, to teach them, you have to enable them. And by enable them, give them the power to teach themselves first. And so what I tell students is, if you can't find it or figure it out after half an hour, come back and see me. But I expect them to make an effort. It's just like I tell my law students, if they're talking to another professor, because some of the contracts professors can be really sort of seem a little mean. They're not, but they seem that way to students. I'm like, you have to show them you tried to figure out the answer first. You can't just go in and say, help me, I don't understand. You go in and you say, here's what I think this says. Is that correct? or where am I correct, or have I gotten sidetracked? And this, it helps. And that's what you have to do, I think, with your older students. If your university has a tech office, an IT office, where students can get help, that's perfect, but not all universities do. But Google and YouTube have great video, help functions, great videos on everything. If that answered your question. There's no easy answer, except they have to help themselves too. So using videos, I love videos. Is there another question on that about the technological gap? It exists. It's real. My dad calls me all the time. And I said, Dad, did you look it up? I mean, I treat him the same way. And now he looks it up. He tries to look it up first. It works well. So cognitive load, we can't overload students' cognitive capacity when we're using videos. Or cognitive load doesn't just relate to video, but partially. I mean, it does and doesn't. We'll get to it. But cognitive load, intrinsic load, difficulty of the subject matter. Vocabulary is easy. I can remember good morning is Salamat Pagi. Germane load, how difficult. Syntax is hard for students. Grammatical structures, conditionals, it's harder. So it's a high intrinsic load versus a low. Germane load, what level of cognitive activity is needed to reach it, and extraneous load, if it doesn't help the learner, don't use it. So intrinsic load, extraneous load are the ones I think about the most. And going to this, it relates to videos too. Somebody says, do I think blended learning teaching is the best in terms of internet connection? If by blended you mean a mix of face-to-face and either asynchronous or synchronous, I don't think you mean that, because I'm pretty sure you guys can't meet face-to-face yet either. I think a mix of synchronous and asynchronous, that type of blended is best for now. I think using one or the other, you can decide what percentage you want to do. I personally prefer using both. I think it makes a difference. Yeah, I think using both synchronous and asynchronous is extraordinarily helpful. We use Brightspace, which is similar to Canvas at Vanderbilt. I had that, and we had our synchronous Zoom classes. We used Zoom. Zoom's not my favorite webinar platform. Neither is Microsoft Teams, but the other ones are too expensive. So we use what our university gives us, is how I look at it. So we use both, and I think both are important. One of my favorite things, we'll get to it in a minute, is journaling, and I use Brightspace to help students journal. In avoiding cognitive overload, all right, if you look at this idea of signaling, if you've noticed on my PowerPoint, some of them were bolded in red, even though I had longer sentences. I was trying to highlight the important things. And changes in color, okay? Segmenting. Short videos, 6 minutes or less. Chapters or click forward questions within videos. All of those sorts of things can help. Weeding, like I don't use music when I'm making videos. I don't use complex backgrounds when I'm doing PowerPoints because it's extra load. Matching modality, I love Khan style videos, especially for what the Khan Academy is teaching, the math that you have to see. Explaining a grammar tutorial using a whiteboard, and there are free whiteboards out there, makes much more sense to me than a synchronous that I'm just staring at you. All right, but we had lots of professors, I shouldn't say lots, we had several professors at Vanderbilt who wanted to stand in front of their chalkboards and write the formulas on the chalkboard, and that would be how they taught their students. Talk about deadly. All right, that would, I mean, you're going to lose students like mad if that's all you do. You have to come up with other things. You notice how I've stopped every now and then to ask you guys if you have questions? Part of that is my 20-minute thing. You need to switch things up in 20 minutes or stop and ask questions. Get students to talk to you. All right, and narrated animations work. Hard to, they've got some great things that do that. They sometimes cost money, so I don't do them as often because I use free things just like you do. So journaling, I love journaling, and I don't care what type of class it is, whether it's face-to-face, whether it's asynchronous, but I ask every Friday, I ask my students in all of my classes, what's the one thing you learned this week, or what's the most important thing you learned this week is what I often say, and what is the one thing you would like to know more about? Because by journaling, I mean, and sometimes they'll tell me about problems with departments, and I'll talk about that, but then I'll say, but what's the one thing you learned in class? And I'll respond back. I have colleagues, we did journaling in a summer program. They hated it because they thought it took too much time. I think they simply spent too much time thinking through it. It's not, it doesn't take that long to respond to a journal entry if you've only got 2 questions. What's the most important thing you learned this week, and what's the one thing you would like to know more about? You learn a lot about what's happening in a class by doing that at the end of a week. Any questions about that? Have any of you tried journaling with your students? And I don't mean they have to write a daily journal. I don't want to read a daily journal. I mean, we did do it 3 times a week once. I loved that, but it was a little too much for the students. So I started doing it once a week. Has anybody else tried that? I'm giving you a chance to type. All right, if you haven't, now see, because I can't see you, I think you've disappeared. Here's what I would turn off. If I were in a real class and not a webinar, I would turn off my screen share and start looking at your pictures to see if you were there. Okay. Journaling helps a lot with design-related studies. Yeah, I'm sure. It would be. It would help a lot. I love journaling. I think it's perfect. Include students as teachers. You learn more by teaching somebody else than you ever learn from your teacher. Guided peer reviews, discussion moderators, content presentation, like I had my law students do, video creation, video about content areas that you tell them to watch their English because you're doing English. Oh, good. Other students reflection. You can call it reflections as well as journaling. All of these ideas use students as teachers, and students, you as the teacher, as a professor, have to facilitate it. When my students were doing their presentations for this semester in law, sometimes I had to stop them and speed them up because they were just talking too much. So I would ask questions. And at the end of every class, for the next group of students, I would talk to them. I would tell them how I wanted them to present, what I expected from them. I would review their outlines. I would send them to me before class. And I would say, great, don't read it. You have to talk it. Because if you read it, it's boring. You don't have the inflection that you need. And that's one of the things as EFL teachers, you have to teach your students how to have inflection in their voices so that they're not necessarily boring when they speak. So sharing, water cooler room, like in Canvas, which a lot of you have, in Brightspace, which I have, I can create a special room for students only where they can get in and talk. My experience has been they don't use it much. They would rather use WhatsApp or an app that they already use. If permitted in the US, and if students want to, always voluntary, share social media communication accounts, because social interaction is missing in online teaching. It should be, see, there's a mistake. Should be no S on that teaching. And students miss that interaction they have with their students. Instagram, TikTok, WhatsApp, all of that works. Let's see. Students need a lot of help getting used to writing their train of thought instead of thinking about what. Yes, they do. They have a lot of censored thought process. But that's one of the things. What you just said there to me, Padlet. Here, I'm going to read this to you guys because I think it's important to think about. Students need a lot of help getting used to writing their train of thought instead of thinking about what they are about to write too much, which results in a lot of censored thought process that the educators actually want to inspect. And I think you need to share that thought with your students, that here's what I'm really after. I mean, when I did the journaling the first couple of weeks, they didn't tell me much. But after, they told me a lot. Students, is it necessary? I actually, and my students liked it better when students presented. I had little strips of paper where I had the things we had discussed about presentations, organization, transitioning between different thoughts, stuff like that. And every student rated each one who presented. And the students got all of those at the end of the class from every student in the class, anonymously. And the students, and what I told the students was, you don't look at every comment, you look at the commonalities. What is everyone saying that you might need to improve? And students talked about that during our final meetings, that they learned they weren't speaking loudly enough because everyone said they were too soft-spoken. So we had a rubric that the students used, but everybody graded each presenter. And it wasn't just the teacher, and the students gained valuable insight from that it wasn't just me. Students as teachers, I don't always evaluate the students when they're teaching. I evaluate what I tell them I'm going to do. If I have said, we are talking about your organization, that is all I evaluate. Although I have to, go ahead. There's a question, it sounds like. Was there a question? Anybody? I go to the next. You guys, if there are questions, now it's time to ask.
Excuse me.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Talking about web platform, I also want to share my favorite web platforms. First is Schoology, because in these applications, I can make a folder that contains guidelines. I can attach video links about the lessons discussed, and we can combine it with assessments using other platforms. For
Perfect.
example,
what
using
was that?
Wonderstage. Yeah.
What was the name of it again? I missed the name.
My name is Alfie.
No, the name of your platform. It sounded great.
Schoology.
Okay. Schoology. Okay, great.
Okay. So also combine it with assessment or using Wondershare Quiz Creator. And also this. I can also include a forum group discussions on Schoology, where students could discuss with each other about lessons being discussed. And also in this forum group discussion, we also can monitor the obstacle faced by students and provide some guidance for them. Thank you.
No, I've used Schoology before. I like it. It's a great platform. So yeah, and you guys, that's a great thing to do. Share the platforms that really are working for you and how it works. And somebody just asked on Padlet, if we integrate overtly social media into online learning, Won't students feel like their safe social circle is being invaded? In my experience as a student, it's not uncommon for my peers to make a second account on Instagram to upload. I mean, I have 4 Facebook accounts and 3 Instagram accounts. So I think it's perfect to use extra accounts. They don't have to use their personal one. That's fine with me. In fact, I would recommend it. I think that's the way to go. Some school context dialogues are hard. I mean, what do you mean by dialogues? Getting students to discuss issues? Well, if I can't get students to discuss, I start with easy, specific questions, and I explain to them what I'm doing. These are the easy ones. Please answer them. You know the answers. Then I ratchet it up. So I scaffold it so that they can answer the easy ones, gets a little more in depth. Then they might have to do some synthesis. Then they might have to do some critique. But slowly, I don't necessarily do that in 1 week. I start 1 week doing the really easy stuff and then give them good feedback. And when people give more answers, I talk about that. Yeah, student-teacher dialogues and talks. Students, it takes a time. Students have to feel comfortable with you, that you are not going to slap them down if they ask, and I'm using air quotes. You can't see it. I don't know if you know what air quotes are. I tell my students there is no such thing as a stupid question. In my heart of hearts, I know that there are stupid questions, but I don't tell them that. And I don't let them see it if I think their question was not the brightest question on the block. All right? Because if I start criticizing students too much, they're not going to talk to me. What I have done in large classes is I will take sections of multiple papers when I'm doing like writing exercises and put all of the sentences or paragraphs up and ask the students to tell me which one they like best and why. And truthfully, sometimes I change my mind because students have great ideas. But I let students be right. I let them contradict me on more than one occasion throughout our discussions, because that's how they learn, and students are smart. I mean, that's my take on it. They know stuff that I don't know because they have different life experiences. And so I'm willing to go there with them. And I think the dialogues are tough, because until they feel that comfortable with you, they're not going to necessarily interact as much as they should. And I don't say you're going to reach every single student. You may not. All right. I mean, I don't in face-to-face classes either. I just do my best. And I think that's all anybody can expect, that we do our best, if that makes sense, in the best way we can. All right. And I'm going to show you a few of my apps, and then we'll have just fast. I'm not going to talk about them because we're running out of time. I love Canva. It's fabulous for students building timelines, all sorts of stuff. Socrative I use all the time. I am going to show you that because I want to show you how much you can do with it. Oh, I have it open. Here we go. So this is what I use for law. It's free. I don't pay for it. I have a room. I said it was multiple choice. This was one of the questions. They're long, but students, I gave them a long time to look at them. We did it prior to class because they should have read the material first. And then we discussed why each answer was wrong or right. We didn't just talk about the right answer. We talked about all of the options. And that was extraordinarily useful. And you can do it for all sorts of activities. Reading comprehension, this is a law exercise, a problem, whether an attorney can be disciplined under the model rules of conduct. Kahoot, I will show you very quickly. I will start. I use it more. Oh, it's waiting for players. It won't work. So it's, there are ways to do it online. It's better face-to-face. It's a competition between students. They loved it. I used it for review of weekly sessions. And I think those are the only ones I was going to open up and show you. YouTube, I use all the time. I have a YouTube channel. You guys should have a YouTube channel. Every teacher should. Whoops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. That was my mistake. Screencast-O-Matic, it's Screencast software. I use it if I want to show something on my screen that I'm trying to explain to students. 15 minutes are free. I use it when I'm giving feedback on presentations from students. Oops, sorry. Kahoot and Factile is a Jeopardy game. They're my favorite for face-to-face classes. Factile even has an information sheet on how you can play Factile online. So it's, I don't know if you know Jeopardy, it's a very culturally American thing, but it worked very well for reviews, just like Kahoot did. So, final questions, you guys, because we've got 6 minutes, and those are my things. I didn't talk about my stuff as much. We can engage students. We just have to, I mean, we have to design our classes so they're interactive. We give students a chance to ask questions and review. Any questions?
So thank you very much, Debbie, for such a wonderful presentation. And today we've learned engagement, and there are some elements such as communication, be present, be timely, and interestingly enough, that you also introduced us to some apps that we're going to use to make them engage in the classrooms. And yeah, there's a lot of things we've learned today, especially like reading a movie, that we have to consider some components like the cognitive load, something like that, Debbie, intrinsic load, German loads, and extraneous load, right? Okay, right. So anyone, please, you are invited to ask questions to Debbie, because we have 5 more minutes before we are going to close. Okay, one more question before we are going to close.
Oh, what did I mean with multiple papers work? I'm not sure what I said. Oh, I know what I mean. Oh, okay, sorry, I know what you're asking.
Yeah.
When students turned in papers for me, okay, I would take sections of the paper designed to show, like maybe the introduction. Often I did the introduction for the thesis statement, and I would take that section of a paper from several different students' papers, put it on the screen, and have the students tell me which of the introduction sections they liked best, because they'd all had to write it. So they knew what the topic was. And then once they chose, I had them tell me why they liked it. And the ones they didn't choose, I would have them explain why they didn't, and then we would fix them together to make them all work. It takes time, but they learned a lot through us doing that. And I don't mean time, extra time for me as a teacher, I mean classroom time. But my goal in the class is to not have them write, but to explain to them how different aspects can be changed to make a paragraph or a sentence or an essay better. And I couldn't do the whole essay because I couldn't take like 3 5-page essays and share them all in class and be anonymous, but I took sections of different ones, if that makes sense. That's what I meant by multiple papers, yeah.
Thank you, Debbie, for the explanation. Somebody has raised their hands. Okay, please, if you ask question to Debbie, somebody has raised hands.
In Padlet, what do you think we should focus on our online teaching since we're forced to teach? I think you need to work on making your classes interactive. All right, that creates more engagement. So don't just talk to them, don't just give them discussions. Find a way to get the students involved in the class. Have them do videos, have them create Canva infographics. There are multiple things you can do. Have students be discussion moderators, but you're going to have to train them to do that. Just like you were trained to be a teacher. You're sort of training them. No, you don't train them to the same degree. They don't need all the theories, but they need to understand how to do it.
And there is no the brightest questions on the blog, right, Debby? So
Not
we
a question.
never. Okay,
I do not
somebody.
have a question, but I would.
Yeah,
I would
please. Yeah, please,
yeah, I'm sorry. I would like to have your email. I was trying to take it, but you just removed it.
Sorry, I removed it. No, I'm sending this PowerPoint will be sent to you, so you'll have my email.
Oh yeah, wonderful.
I'm sharing the PowerPoint with all of you guys.
That's
Feel
wonderful.
free. It's no big deal. All the links are there. You can get out, and I'm also sharing a couple of PDFs that I think are really interesting about
Great.
student engagement.
Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Debby. Wow, we got PowerPoint then, so we can learn more about that. Okay, so
Yeah.
Debby, there is Yaroslava just come in.
Ah, Yaroslava. Hi.
Yaroslava, can you unmute your audio, please?
Yes, yes.
Let me.
Okay, so there is Debby.
Yaroslava is like Daniel.
This is me. Hi.
Hi. Yaroslava is like Daniel. Daniel and Yaroslava were part of a program where we were working on online things. Yaroslava in Ukraine, Daniel in Indonesia. We're still in contact. And that's what's great about these online classes. We still stay in touch with people. And the iMovers are here. And so she teaches online and has been teaching online for a number of years, since 2010.
Yes.
And she does synchronous and asynchronous public speaking, academic writing, and phonology at the National University. I'm going to see if I can do it, Yaroslava. Of
Kiev Real Academy.
Mohila.
Yeah, right.
All right, Yaroslava, can you tell some things about what your experience you have been going through with the online teaching, so everybody can listen to you, please, in Ukraine?
Okay, thank you. So my experience in online teaching, as Debra already said, is long. I use different platforms, different tools. What I like most is the Canvas, but recently I discovered for myself the Google class, because my daughter had to switch in her school to Google Class to teach her kids, and I kind of helped her, and I liked Google too. So that is easy, and almost everyone has the Google account, so no problem to register and get involved. What I like about online teaching is that I can stay at home, have my tea or coffee. I do not spend time on traveling to the university and back. I do the same job because usually in my university I had face-to-face classes, but all homework was online. I used first I used Moodle for the homework, then I switched to Canvas because I find it more convenient and more flexible. And what I don't enjoy in online learning is when the students miss the deadlines and then they start asking for extensions. And that is okay if that is not the peer assessed activity, because with peer assessed activities it is difficult to then find the partners for the peer work, or I have myself to assess that work, which is okay, but it is extra work for me. Maybe you have some specific questions.
All right, so we are quite optimistic with the technology because now we are in the COVID-19 pandemic situation. But this is, I think, we can do to make the learning done. Yeah, to the technology. Every teacher in the world is doing making use of the technology. Thank you very much, Yaroslava, for the great explanation. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. I expect Ivan is also here as well. Ivan.
I don't think Ivan made it. I never heard from you.
It is too early here, 7 o'clock in the morning. I
see.
He sleeps late.
Okay, hopefully Ivan can join us. Okay. So everyone, thank you very much. Give applause to Debra Lee. Thank you for great explanation. All right, Debra, let me take over the screen for a while. Is that okay?
All
okay,
right.
I'm going to share everyone the exit ticket. Okay, the exit ticket. Yeah. So everybody, this is the exit ticket. You are going to have fill in the information there. Okay.
And I will send everything to Daniel, the
Sure.
PowerPoint and the articles, and he will send it out to you guys, Daniel and Amy, because
Thank
Amy
you,
has been.
Okay. Well, Demi, Debbie, could you stop sharing your screen, please?
I thought I had. Hold on.
Have you?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not sharing my screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm trying to do that now.
It's up.
Is it work? Can
Yeah.
you see that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so this is the exit ticket, everybody. bit.ly bit.ly exit forms with S5. Okay, so Amy, are you here? How long will we wait for everybody to fill in?
Yeah, we will wait for 15 minutes for everyone to fill the form.
Okay, so while we are waiting for everybody to fill in, once again, Debbie, thank you very much for being with us today. Great presentation. All right, so stay healthy, Debbie.
You too.
And also, yeah, and also for everyone. Thank you very much, Debbie. Thank you.
May I have a question?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Yaroslava.
Yes, I am supposed to fill in the form. Where can I find it?
It's fine. It's fine, Yaroslava. Yeah, it's okay.
Oh, you can.
Where is this?
You go to Bitly. You see that on the screen?
Uh-huh.
Bit.ly/exit forms 5. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you can just paste it into your web browser and it takes you there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Somebody can't access it. Daniel, somebody can't access the exit form.
Okay, everyone.
For this form,
Can you type something on your web browser, bit.ly, exit forms 5? Can you do that?
Yeah, all you have to do is type in bit.ly/exit forms 5. Just stick it in your browser. It works. All right, you guys. I'm going to hang up and I'm going
Yes,
to
thank you. Thank you very much, Debbie. Thank you. Goodbye.
send to Amy and Daniel the thing and they'll send it to you guys, okay?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you very much, Debbie.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Bye. Yeah.
Bye.
Well, it seems it doesn't work. Does it work for somebody else?
Yes, I think it worked for anyone else.
Yes.
Can you be careful with the S word behind the M? Usually we forget that.
With the S, what do I do with the S? Capital? Well,
Oh no, everything in lowercase. So you can try to refresh it one more time. Usually it needs refresh because everyone is accessing it right now.
Small letters, all are written in small letters, right, Amy?
Yes, everything is small letters, lowercase letter.
Okay.
And
And
no
refresh
S
your
and
web
font.
browsers. Refresh your web browsers.
It can't work so far. Well, I tried many times. It doesn't work. Is there any other option?
Yes, you can send me your data via my email. So this morning I have sent emails to your registered emails. My name with the name Bebasari. If you find it, okay, you can reply to my email and please send your data, your full name, your institution, country, and also I think that those three.
Okay.
And also your preferred emails to be sent.
Okay, no problem.
For the certificate. Is it okay?
Okay, it's fine. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.